I'm Hannah McCain again with the Winston County Journal, and I've got another recipe for you to try again this week. Today we're going to be using a bread maker, and if you don't know what a bread maker is, you need to learn about them. You need to go get one right now because they are so awesome, and you're like 3 hours away from a homemade loaf of bread. I kid you not, it's so easy. All you do is you just dump all your ingredients in here, you put it in the bread machine, you press bake, and 3 hours later you have homemade bread. It's awesome. My children love it. You can make, not only can you make bread, but you can make pasta dough, you can make pizza dough, you can make cinnamon rolls, jams, yogurts, you name it. You can do it with your bread maker. Okay, so today we're gonna make some whole wheat bread, and I've got my little container here that I've gotten out of my bread maker. So we're gonna be working with 3 different types of flour today. We have just a regular bread flour, we have a whole wheat flour, and then we also have rye flour. Okay, so the thing that you need to understand about your bread maker is you want to put your wet ingredients in first. So our wet ingredient, hey Mr. Hub. Hey. Okay, so our wet ingredient is water. Okay, so you're going to put 1 1/4 cup of water in the bottom, and that's what I have down in here. Okay, next you're going to add 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're just going to pour it in there. Now we've got 2 1/2 tablespoons of butter, and again, like I did with the banana bread, everything's room temperature except my yeast. I keep my yeast in the refrigerator in a tightly sealed container. It stays good for a whole lot longer. Okay, so then you're going to have 2 tablespoons of sugar. Okay, next we're going to do the whole wheat flour. We're gonna carefully pour this in here. My grandmother had a bread machine, and my mother had a bread machine, and since everybody was like kind of quarantined and staying at home, you know, it made her use her bread machine more, and so she decided she would upgrade, and she gifted me with her old one, and I used it so much it finally quit. It was probably like 20 years old, and so I ordered a new one, and so I'm so excited to be trying out my new bread machine. And typically I have these canisters, and I would just scoop the flour out of the canisters, but I wanted to make everything so pretty for y'all, so that's why it's going to take me a minute to dump this flour in here without having a total mess. But my children, they love homemade bread, and you know, once you start eating homemade bread, it's hard to go and buy it from the store. Okay, so next we have bread flour. Some recipes will tell you to use like all-purpose flour, but my grandmother, Hannah, she always used bread flour. If she was going to be making rolls or bread or anything like that, she always went and got bread flour. Okay, all right, and next we have our rye flour. Okay, all right, now final ingredient is a tablespoon of yeast. And so what you want to do, see I've got all that poured in there, you want to try to make a well with your spatula, like a little hole, and what you're going to do is put your yeast in the well. Now, one tip is you never want your wet ingredients to touch your yeast when you're doing this. Okay, so that's the reason why you put all your wet ingredients, which is your water, down at the bottom. Okay, get that out. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here to my bread maker. Turn it. Put it down in here. All right, so every bread maker is different. but they all have different settings. So like this one has basic, sweet bread, whole wheat, French. It goes on and on, okay? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna set it for the whole wheat setting, which is number 3. And then it'll ask like what the weight is. This is for a 2-pound loaf. So we'll do that. I think it's 750 grams. Okay. And then it'll ask like what crust color you want. Do you want light, medium, or dark? And I usually just leave it because it's already programmed in your bread maker. So you can just hit start. Okay, so this timer says like 3 hours and 35 minutes. You'll have homemade fresh bread. The great thing about the bread maker is you don't have to knead the bread. It does that for you. It's in a controlled temperature setting so that your bread is sure to rise. You just need to make sure that you have really good fresh yeast, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this. Please check out the Winston County Journal newspaper where this recipe will be published in, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for watching our video. Hopefully you get some laughs because we do have a crazy boy-filled home. But be sure to check out our other videos and make sure you pick up a copy of the Winston County Journal this week for this recipe and others. And I promise hopefully next week's video will be much more, have a little bit more finesse to it. So thank you so much. Have a great week.